Jujutsu Kaisen has some of the most world-changing ambitions I've seen in a shonen in quite some time. Kenjaku wanting to bring about the destruction of all life on Earth just because he thought it would be fun to watch. Gojo becoming the strongest and standing above all, wanting to wipe out a corrupt system that would gladly sacrifice children's lives. Yuji taking one of the most dangerous powers on Earth into his own body, only to agree to be executed once his journey is finished if it'll reduce the amount of uncontrolled deaths around Japan. And Yuki wanting to remove something that's a fundamental part of human existence to change the entire way that the world works as a whole. Hakari is different in the sense that he doesn't want any of these things. The thing that drives Hakari is the fever. The feeling that people get when they're about to do something that can change their lives. The rush of being alive, the thrill of the fight, and the thrill of life itself. Pushing himself and everyone around him to their limits is exactly what makes Hakari, Hakari. Many people surprisingly downplay Hakari, saying that he isn't a special grade sorcerer, that there's no way he can possibly be on the level of Yuta and the others, that he's overrated and that he's not nearly as strong as he's made out to be, when that's not at all the way that his feats in the series portray him, and nor is that the author's intent when he was writing Hakari in the story. This video will be to dispel some of the narratives that have plagued Hakari since he was first introduced as a character. The biggest thing to get out of the way when it comes to Hakari is one of the byproducts of his jackpot ability. That comes from winning the highest prize in his domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble. This bonus being Hakari's infinite curse energy, that's described in his battle against Kashimo in the Culling Games. When Hakari hit the jackpot during Restless Gambler, another name for his domain expansion, his prize during the round for 4 minutes and 11 seconds while Pure Love Train plays in the background is infinite curse energy that will flow through him until the time limit is depleted. Hakari never acquired a reverse curse technique, but the infinite curse energy overflowing in Hakari's body caused his body to reflexively perform reverse curse technique in order to avoid damage. This infinite wording has caused many debates about Hakari's character, some even going as far as to discredit the credibility of the author himself and thinking that his own wording of infinite didn't make any sense and was meant to be hyperbole rather than a literal interpretation. This is mainly due to the context of what infinite power can actually mean, especially in the eyes of those that are unfamiliar with the series. Many interpret this as Hakari supposedly having infinite power and that he would grow to the point where he would destroy a universe with his bare hands and wipe out all of reality with a snap of his fingers had this power truly been as infinite as the statement implied. However, this interpretation ignores two things. In chapter 98, when Mei fights against a no-name curse user, she outlines that in her journey of becoming a grade 1 sorcerer, she intended to do so by enhancing her body with cursed energy, using her cursed energy to improve her agility and strength. However, even when enhancing the body with cursed energy, there's limits to how far that can go, as cursed energy won't keep improving your body forever and will eventually reach its limit on how much it can boost you in that regard. The second is that in Yuta's fight against Suguru in Volume 0 and in several other places throughout the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, it's referenced time and time again that there are limits to the amount of cursed energy that someone can output at one time, meaning that no matter how much of it you have, you can only use so much of it at once. This is only bypassed by things like Kokichi Muta's Heavenly Restriction, the binding vows made by Yuta in Volume 0, and Mei's crows using Bird Strike. All of these things come with their own sacrifices on behalf of the user to surpass the limits of how much curse energy they can put out at one time. So Hakari having neither of these things doesn't give him an infinite well of strength that he could use to one-shot everyone in the series, but instead gives him so much of it that he can never run out during that time. It's almost like how Gojo doesn't run out of curse energy because the Six Eyes make his output so efficient compared to everyone else's. Except Hakari has an infinite well of curse energy that's constantly being poured into him, which he can use a certain amount of as he chooses during his time limit, along with many other benefits that I'll get into later as well. With that out of the way, we can get into Hakari's more serious scaling and where he stands as one of the most dangerous men that Jujutsu Kaisen has ever seen. Right off the bat, Hakari is shown as a boss, not some run-of-the-mill sorcerer that you would find anywhere. He has a completely different aura about him, like he does whatever he wants to do, because that's exactly who he is. He runs his own underground fight club, he plays by his own rules, and those who could have chosen another life chose to follow him simply because he's Hakari. And when the entire Jujutsu world is threatening to come crashing down, Yuji and the others have to go find him, not the other way around. And even after seeing Yuji, he looks at him as someone who stands under him, a potential employee, not someone who would match him or be his equal in any sense of the word. Compare that to other character introductions like Maki, who was touted as the Zenin family failure, Todo, who was introduced as the monster of the Kyoto squad, or even Nanami, who was introduced as someone who could teach Yuji, and Hakari being one of the most important pieces for saving the entire planet from Kenjaku, starts to become a lot more striking for his character. After seeing Yuji beat Panda in his fight club, Hakari takes an interest in Yuji and invites him to work under him. Yuji, along with Panda and Megami, then make it obvious to Hakari and Kirara that they're from Jujutsu High, and Hakari attacks Yuji with no hesitation. Hakari starts manhandling Yuji since anyone from Jujutsu High can't be trusted, and Yuji can barely defend himself as he begs Hakari to listen to him, until he finally grabs Hakari and puts everything that he has into a headbutt, and it does no damage to him even at that point. Yuji is someone who's been pushing special grades to their limits for almost his entire career, and is one of the strongest students that Tokyo and Kyoto has to offer, having punched dents into Hanami, a special grade cursed spirit that can take even more damage than Jogo, and taking Mahito to a point of near death. The same Yuji who in only 3 hits almost took out a special grade death painting with his bare hands, has grown even stronger to the point where that same special grade calls him a demon god. And Yuji can't even phase Hakari a single time, as Hakari stares back at him, taking the full brunt of Yuji's attack like nothing even happened. Using this, it would be fair to say that any of the special grades that Yuji could contend with wouldn't be able to damage Hakari either, the only exception being someone like Mahito, who would ignore his durability entirely, although there's still more to that conversation as well. Having no interest in listening to someone that lied to him, Hakari throws Yuji outside and intends to beat him until he can say something that he's satisfied with Yuji begging Hakari to listen to him, and Hakari only intending to do so as long as Yuji remains standing, intending on hammering him with punches in the meantime. After negotiations go over smoothly between Megami and Kirara, Hakari slams his fist into Yuji's face and notices that he's not even resisting, with Megami even saying to himself that Yuji is getting destroyed, as Yuji aims to take the full brunt of Hakari's damage to prove a point. Hakari punches Yuji 2 times and damages him without even putting all of his strength into his punches, forcing blood out of Yuji with only a few attacks. Yuji then flies back in pain with blood spilling out of his body and says that no matter how much force Hakari puts into his punches, they're going to damage him regardless, and that being hit by him is like being hit with a serrated bat. Serrated is a word that means jagged and is typically associated with sharp blades with many edges on the sides. So think about a combat knife and all the sharp edges that are used to rip apart whatever it's cutting, and that's the composition of Hakari's curse energy. Yuji calling Hakari's curse energy a serrated bat, given the context, would likely be referring to something like Lucille, a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire that Negan used to brutally execute his enemies in The Walking Dead, which is exactly what Hakari's curse energy coats his entire body with every time he attacks someone. Hakari then hits Yuji with another punch that sends him flying hard enough for him to think that Yuji was close to being dead, despite seeing how strong Yuji actually was. Yuji is the man that can not only fight side by side with Nanami, a grade 1 sorcerer who should be equal to a special grade in strength, but who also went head to head with Todo, the monster of the Kyoto squad that killed 5 grade 1 curses and a special grade in the same day, who Gakuganji wouldn't dare to challenge after Todo threatened to kill him despite Gakuganji killing Yaga, and who Yuji surpassed in their fight against Mahito in Shibuya, where Todo openly claimed that he was being left behind. Yet Hakari can almost take him out in a few punches while not even taking Yuji seriously, showing that if he did get serious against Yuji, he would either kill him or beat him into a coma along with Nanami, Todo, and anyone that's close to him in strength. After Hakari hears about Gojo being sealed, he agrees to compete in the Culling Games and decides to go after Kashimo, who I'll get into later. As with him being stronger than both Megami and Yuji, it's only right that he fights the strongest player that their respective colonies have to offer. In his search for Kashimo, Hakari runs into Charles, a modern-day sorcerer awakened by the Culling Games. In his fight against Hakari, Charles reveals that he can see the future of anyone that he's up against as long as he cuts them with Chi Warstaff, his cursed tool that's a pen that fills with ink, seeing 1 second into Hakari's future for the rest of their fight. With confidence, Hakari declares that while Charles can see into the future, if that's all he has, then he doesn't stand a chance against him, as he rushes Charles faster than he can respond and blitzes him from his blind spots. Even with this, Hakari doesn't think he needs to go all out against him, but will use his domain expansion to break Charles completely. Hakari then uses his domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble, and injects all of the rules of his curse technique and his domain expansion into Charles's brain, with Hakari's entire domain expansion revolving around a gambling simulation where the main goal is to get a jackpot, which again I'll get into later. Charles rushes Hakari and berates him for thinking he'll last in the simulation long enough to land his jackpot ability, since he's fighting someone who can see into his future, with Hakari mocking him and saying that even when he can see into Hakari's future, he still can't hit him. This is even more significant because before Hakari even brought out his domain in the first place, Charles boosted the effect of his curse technique by scraping Hakari a second time, meaning that he was now seeing 2 seconds in Hakari's future and still couldn't deal with it, making it even worse. By the time Charles did finally catch up to Hakari, his jackpot ability had already been in the process of activating, and he destroys Charles with a kick to the face, showing that even when someone can see into the literal future, Hakari can still outsmart and outmatch them if he's that much stronger than his opponent. After beating Charles, the only thing left to do was hunt down Kashimo, a player brought back from 400 years ago by Kenjaku, who had no other goal in mind than hunting down and executing Sukuna with his own 2 hands, who was even willing to fight Kenjaku himself, the second strongest barrier user of all time, with no hesitation, and wasn't even interested in Ryu, a sorcerer that pushed Yuta to his limits in Sendai Colony. Kashimo just got done gutting Panda, and beat him without even seeing him as so much of a challenge, even with Panda pushing himself to a form that no one had seen up until that point. So with no one left to fight Kashimo, Hakari arrives to do it himself. In his fight against Panda, Kashimo electrocutes Panda from the inside out, frying the insides of its body with a single attack. This is because of a phenomenon with Kashimo's cursed energy, where because of it being charged with electricity, most cursed energy defenses can't block it, giving Kashimo a way of attacking his opponents that will go right past their defenses and fry them regardless. But Hakari's cursed energy output is so high that when his jackpot is active, which is evident by the music playing around him, Kashimo's cursed energy trait doesn't even bother Hakari, who laughs it off as something to be toyed with rather than taken seriously. As with high enough curse energy, Hakari can outright ignore Kashimo's curse energy trait altogether, the same way that Hanami could power through Inumaki's curse speech, and the same way that Maki could overpower the curse technique of a semi-grade 1 sorcerer with her raw strength alone, with Kashimo's passive ability not even being strong enough to reach him. Hakari and Kashimo start the brawl with the 2 trading blows back and forth at one point, where Hakari even shatters the ground beneath them with his bare hands, with Kashimo even shooting out lightning at one point to take Hakari's head clean off of his body. Hakari then dodges this attack that's supposed to be faster than anyone can react to, and moves far enough for it to hit his arm instead of his face. Lightning moves at a speed of 270,000 miles per hour, and is far faster than man-made inventions like bullets from military-grade machine guns, and even the fastest fighter jets and missiles ever recorded in history. This is far more impressive than Maki catching bullets at point-blank range, and Takaba even dancing in front of military soldiers that were sent to kill him, and once again serves as yet another reason that Hakari is a cut above. And while Hakari wasn't fast enough to dodge the attack completely, as it did still blow off one of his arms, the fact that he was able to respond to it at all does say quite a bit about his real speed, and should put him at least somewhere in a ballpark that's barely below lightning speed, or in other words, the lower end of massively hypersonic. Attacking Kashimo, the arm that Hakari lost as a result of Kashimo's lightning, grows back fully healthy as if nothing ever happened. As after Hakari hits his jackpot, his body is filled with infinite curse energy, letting him tap into healing abilities that will regenerate any damage done to his body that doesn't destroy his brain in one shot, for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, with that same healing being completely automatic, making him unkillable for most in the series the entire time that it's active, which we will get into later on, making Hakari not only a raid boss that can knock out Yuji without even trying, but who can also endlessly heal himself for 4 minutes at a time, as long as he maxes out on his domain expansion. This is in addition to him being so strong that Yuji can't even damage him when he puts everything that he had into attacking him, making him top tier in every area along with his speed. Even when Kashimo injects lightning straight into Hakari's brain through his nose, Hakari heals himself as the lightning is in the process of exploding his entire skull and shoots it out of his nostrils like it didn't even matter. Kashimo even rips a hole straight through Hakari's torso. None of it is effective against Hakari, as he counters everything that Kashimo can throw at him, removing the chlorine gas poisoning that Kashimo used by electrocuting the water around them as well, something that many users of reverse curse technique can't do. Showing that Hakari's jackpot doesn't only grant him automatic reverse curse technique, it also grants him one of the highest and most effective levels of reverse curse technique as well, something that you would only see from the top tiers of the series, like Yuta, Gojo, and so on. Hakari then uses his domain expansion several more times throughout the fight, as this is one of the many byproducts of his strongest ability, the infinite curse energy that flows through him when he hits a jackpot, restoring all of the curse energy that was lost when the domain was activated, and restoring his curse technique to let him use it again freely. He's essentially unstoppable for most of the cast off of that alone, as hardly anyone can kill him when he's in his unkillable state. Restoring his curse energy and his curse technique lets Hakari use Restless Gambler to restore the timer on his regeneration as many times as he wants to, as long as he keeps landing jackpots, which becomes easier to do over time as he has a mechanic worked into his domain expansion called Increased Probability, letting him spam his most powerful move as long as he deems necessary, rather than being drained of all of his curse energy like Mahito and many others after using their domains a single time. Hakari then beats Kashimo after he used all of his curse energy to detonate the area around them in an attempt to finish off Hakari for good, which Hakari survived due to a binding vow, where he sacrificed his own arm to use all of the curse energy that would have been used with it to protect the rest of his body from Kashimo's attack, something that had no major consequence for Hakari as he can get it back later. Hakari has beaten one of the strongest in the culling games at this point that Yuji, Megumi, Todo, and the Nami all would have died against had they faced him themselves. Now, I'm gonna stop the video for a second to ask you a question as the viewer, and possibly as an avid reader of the series. There's an ongoing debate about Hakari not being a special grade sorcerer, not being as strong as he's made out to be, not worth the hype that he's given by not only the people who watch the series, but the people in the series itself who speak about his strength. And this is a widespread argument. If you look this up, there are all kinds of videos about Hakari not being on the level that he's portrayed to be in the story. So with that information in mind, I'm gonna define for you what a special grade sorcerer actually is. Special grades, as shown by this chart, are known to be the strongest of the strong, the pinnacle of strength, those that stand above special grade cursed spirits and all of the grade 1 sorcerers. Now that you've made it this far into the video, and you've heard about how Hakari would destroy Yuji and the other grade 1 sorcerers that scale below him, which is almost all of them, how Yuji, as someone who stands above Nanami and Todo, couldn't even damage Hakari, let alone get him to flinch with a full power headbutt, and got taken to his limits by a handful of Hakari's attacks. On top of the special grades that were almost taken out by Yuji, even all the way up to the most durable of the disaster curses, when adding Todo into the mix. Neither of which can compete with Hakari when he's not even serious about taking down his opponent. Does that sound like a grade 1 sorcerer to you? Does that sound like someone who would be below a special grade and who can't take out grade 1 sorcerers as he's shown on panel? On a whim, who was smacking around someone who was bullying special grade cursed spirits while not even trying to kill him? Does that sound like someone who's not special grade to you? Or does that sound more in line with what a special grade sorcerer is to begin with? Someone who can dominate special grade curses and grade 1 sorcerers like it was just another day in the office. Someone that Yuta would consider on his level when he's at his best, since Yuta did the exact same thing to Yuji to begin with. The exact same statement that started the entire argument about Hakari's strength. The main evidence for this argument not only ignores the depths of Hakari's feats and the context that surrounds them, but is also based on old, outdated information that ignores many other elements in the story as well, and is something that people use to downplay Hakari on a regular basis. One key point of people thinking that Hakari isn't on that level is a statement made by Suguru against Yuta and the Night Parade of 100 Demons, where Suguru states that at the time of his attack, there are only 4 special grade sorcerers in existence: himself, Yuta, Yuki, and Gojo. Hakari being a student and not being included means that he can't be a special grade, right? Well, no, not exactly. Hakari was suspended during the Night Parade of 100 Demons, and since then has remained suspended, and no information has been given about his ranking, seeing as he's moving outside of Jujutsu regulations. With that in mind, seeing as he hasn't been a student, the gap in time between the Night Parade of 100 Demons and present day in the manga wouldn't be a time where they would give him an updated ranking to begin with. The closest thing that you can extract from this statement is that Hakari wasn't a special grade during the Night Parade of 100 Demons, but that doesn't say anything about how much stronger he's gotten since that time, especially with him having feats that clearly demonstrate him being on that level, along with statements from other characters who blatantly say that he can compete with them who are on that level as well, with Suguru's statement being more than a year old at this point in the story, and no longer being the end-all be-all of people who achieved a special grade sorcerer level of strength. Examples of those that have power on par with special grade sorcerers being Toji and Maki, who haven't been given official rankings either to put them in that category, and Hakari is no different. As someone who can manhandle one of the strongest, if not the strongest grade 1 sorcerer in the series, who is already pushing special grade curses to their limits to begin with, Hakari is one of the most clear candidates for special grade that I've ever seen. One of the most notable things about Hakari are his abilities, namely his domain expansion, which, as described before, gives him infinite curse energy that he can only use a set amount of at one time, and effectively makes him immortal for 4 minutes and 11 seconds at a time, as long as he hits a jackpot, which, once he hits the first one, the odds of him hitting another back-to-back get even higher. This reverse curse technique that he gains access to is fully automatic, and gives Hakari a way to regenerate from anything that doesn't destroy his brain in a single attack, even including taking poisons out of his body, which are some of the most deadly attack options in Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. This is significant because he can literally have the limbs blown off of his body and keep fighting like nothing even happened, charging at whoever blew his limbs off like a Terminator for 4 minutes at a time. And while destroying Hakari's brain in one shot may not sound like as much of a challenge as destroying someone's soul like Mahito does, when it comes to Hakari, it actually gets quite complicated. As you look through the series, the list of curse techniques that won't get the job done is way longer than the ones that can actually take him out. So to paint a picture for you of how significant this jackpot really is, I'm going to list out all of the curse techniques that have no way to kill Hakari when he's in God mode in the series. Choso, Aso, and Kachizu's blood manipulation and rot techniques that poison and decay their targets' bodies from the inside out have no way to stop Hakari, due to him targeting and removing poisons from his body subconsciously, along with Kashimo's chlorine gas poison, which Hakari recovered from during their fight. Jogo's flame-based techniques that he hit Nanami with at point-blank range, which was the same attack that he used against Gojo in their first fight, didn't even take Nanami's head off and incinerated him down to the meat and bone, meaning that Hakari would recover from it and brush it off. Megumi's 10 Shadow Shikigami that don't have the power to rip through Hakari's brain in one strike, and even Divine Dog Totality, who's strong enough to cut Hanami, doesn't have the range to take out Hakari's whole brain all at one time. Uro's technique that bends and shatters space on top of her opponent wouldn't destroy Hakari's skull either, since Yuta, who compares Hakari to himself, took the attack multiple times in a single fight. Reggie Star and his goons would run from Hakari when they see him. Kirara wouldn't have any way of damaging him on that level. No one from the Hei is taking Hakari's head off, including Naoya himself, and Dagon has no way to destroy Hakari's skull in one shot either, and may even struggle to get rid of him in his domain expansion, assuming that Hakari doesn't override it with his own, along with Hanami and some of Kenjaku's lesser goons like Haruta Shigemo having no way of dealing with Hakari when he's at his max strength. Jiro, who can invert the damage of his opponents, is not taking out Hakari. Ino with his beast summons is not taking out Hakari either. And none of the cursed spirits that Suguru has shown to date would be enough to wipe out Hakari without question. Toto isn't taking Hakari's head off, as someone who was even stronger than him in his own words couldn't even damage Hakari to begin with. Nanami's 7-3 that cuts through his opponents with a critical strike may have trouble even damaging Hakari to begin with, based on how he performed against Dagon, let alone cutting his skull open and wiping his brain out at the same time. The only people who have a serious chance at taking Hakari's head clean off of his body are Yuta with Inumaki's cursed speech technique that can blow up, crush, or outright outright kill his opponents, and the beam attack that he can shoot with Rika that blew off half of Suguru's body, Gojo with Hollow Purple that destroys its targets on an atomic level, Yuki who can add so much mass to her body that it defies logic itself and can even turn herself into a black hole that can destroy the entire planet when using her last resort, Sukuna, who can vaporize Maharaga and cut him endlessly with Malevolent Shrine, and Suguru's Maximum Uzumaki, that he thought was strong enough to wipe Yuta off the face of the planet had Yuta not used the Binding Vow to amp himself far beyond his usual strength. Honorable mentions for things like Mei's Bird Strike that can one-shot Cursed Spirits, and maybe Pure Energy Blast like Ryu's Granite Blast, depending on how strong it actually is. Although Yuta could block it with his bare hands, and even took several of them in one fight while healing himself with Reverse Curse technique. Yuta comparing Hakari to himself makes Hakari not being able to deal with Ryu unlikely. Other options being things that can bypass Reverse Curse technique and durability altogether, like Mahito's Idol Transfiguration and Maki and Toji's Soul Liberation Blades, that ignore durability and attack the soul directly, along with Resonance, although Nobara wouldn't even survive long enough to hit Hakari in the first place. With all that in mind, the downplay on Hakari is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen, and you'd be more hard-pressed to find someone that can actually kill him than you might think. Keeping all this in mind, it's not surprising that Gojo thinks when Hakari reaches his peak, which we have not seen yet given the context of the statement, that he'll be even stronger than he is, or at least match him at a bare minimum. The same that was said for Yuta and Yuji when they reached their peaks as well. Hakari's powers, even at this point, are enough to make him undeniably top tier in Jujutsu Kaisen, where he is now, let alone when he gets years and years worth of training and experience behind him to reach these beyond Gojo level heights when he reaches the height of his potential. That's all there is for Hakari. Check out my How Strong is Yuji video if you want some content on the demon god himself. See you in the next one.